Uh, Man, let's just lead off with the Stadium Series game. I mean, I feel like that's a good jump, and then we'll lead it. Then from there we'll backtrack into the three games before that, and we'll talk about the Wild's play, and then after that maybe the trade deadline, and then finally I'm going to talk about Yager for just a little, or then we'll answer. Why don't we do Stadium Series, our play the past four games, and then we'll answer some questions, and then we'll talk about the trade deadline, because there's a question about the trade deadline in here on the Twitter page.
Cool. All right. And welcome to the Lost in the Wild podcast. It took us 5 episodes to actually get a win on this podcast. It took a coaching firing, some key players being scratched, and a lot of head shaking. But finally, the Minnesota Wild find a win on this podcast after we kind of assumed that we were the root of the Wild's problems, not just Mike Yeo or Chuck Fletcher. It seemed much, much worse than that. And well, we finally got some wins. We got a ton of wins over the week. And starting with the Stadium Series last Sunday, that capped off the 4-game winning streak. And a lot coming into that game, coming in on a big winning streak. And then it was, all right, but here's Chicago in an outdoor game. We've never really done this before. How's it going to go? And holy crap, it went all Minnesota Wild for all 3 periods.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, I was kind of worried that we were going to get the jitters a little bit. But man, did they respond. I mean, undefeated under Torchetti. You can see the look on the players' faces. Torchetti's in their ear during games, and not just, the players aren't just looking out on the ice, they're engaged. I know it sounds corny, but there's eye contact there. You can tell that they're definitely paying attention, that he has their attention. They've totally responded so well since this play. Everyone stepped up. Eric Halla named second star of the week. So the line juggling, everything. It seems like everything he's done is gold right now. It's whether or not they can sustain that.
Hey.
We
lost connection there. I don't know what the hell happened.
All right.
So we will just try this again.
Okay. Yeah, we'll start over.
All right. And welcome to the Lost in the Wild podcast. It was a whirlwind week for the Minnesota Wild. After 4 episodes of this podcast, and we thought we were the root of the problems, it turns out we are not. And John Torchetti comes in and gets 4 straight wins, and we cap it off with the great Stadium Series win over Chicago last night at TCF Bank Stadium in a game that had a lot going into it and was kind of just the icing on the cake for the rest of the week. And how quickly things can just really change for the betterment after just a simple coaching change. All of a sudden, after on Sunday, it looked like the Wild just seemed to be playing a great style of hockey for the last 60 minutes in their 4-game winning streak here.
Yeah, it really did. Everyone seemed to be responding quite well. I was kind of worried that we had the jitters, not to diminish anything, but the Western Canada road trip, we didn't exactly face any juggernauts, but, we came out with good wins against those teams, and, we carried that over. Everyone played so well defensively, offensively. The forechecking was just amazing. It seemed like we were beating Chicago to every puck. They were clearly frustrated. I saw Patrick Kane go full Paul Bunyan a couple times there, and you can tell this is such a different team. Torchetti has these guys' ear, and it's noticeable. He's talking to these players, he's engaging these players, and they're listening. You can tell their heads are turned, they're looking at him. It's obvious that there's a different mood in the locker room. Guys have responded. Pominville has just been on fire. Howla has been named second star of the week. it's such a great it's a great change, obviously, with the troubles that we had in the new year. It's too bad that Mike Yeo was the casualty of that. But it's pretty clear now, I think, that was the problem. Not to take anything away from Mike Yeo, but I think he just kind of lost the locker room a little bit. There's only so much you can do so many times before it turns into same old for him. And I think that's what the issue was.
No, and that's it. And a lot of people say, how can you really get mad at Mike Yeo, and can you really be, wow, this is really just Mike Yeo's coaching style? Or coaching style is being changed. No, I don't think that's it. Yeah, some players, I think, clearly just kind of gave up on it. And as fans, as people in general, I think a lot of people have a tough time understanding that and saying how that's a moral or a good thing to do. And yeah, it's probably not the best of thing to do, but he lost the locker room, and that happens in sports. It's 5 years of the same voice, and sure, that isn't necessarily a long-term time he's been here, but it's a long enough where people were sick of it. And it was a consistent slump the Wild went through for 3 straight seasons. And sure, could guys have handled things better? Could Thomas Vanek could have maybe talked to his coach again after not being scratched? But to me, that also tells that this is a guy that's clearly upset. And I don't necessarily see a problem sometimes when I see an athlete get visually upset on the field. I've always said that I more approve of that and more approve of a player showing more emotion, unlike a guy like, let's say, Joe Mauer, who doesn't show anything on the field or anything really when he's frustrated. I like when guys actually, show their heart on their sleeve. And I think the Wild did that, and they were ready for a new voice. They got it in John Torchetti, and Torchetti's getting all the praise for it. I mean, it's funny how that works out in those situations.
Yeah, it really is. I just feel like, it's kind of what you were saying. It's the same thing over and over again, and we've talked about this. I feel like, once the first year it happens, you say some things, you give some pep talks, you choose somebody out. Okay, you respond. The second year, it happens again. You choose somebody out, you have that big blow up that goes viral. You require Devin Dubnyk. This year, the struggles that were clearly, it was clearly on the players. A lot of people argue that, the Stars didn't step up. Well, that's true, but the coaching changes weren't made. There was a heavy reliance on the veterans that I just feel like they maybe were shouldering too much of the load. John Torchetti has said he believes that the Mikael Granlunds, the Charlie Coyles, the Jason Zuckers, the Nino Niederreiters. I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out, but it's their time too. They have to have a voice now in the locker room. They've been in the league 3 or 4 years. They've had a couple good playoff runs. There's no reason why they should be deferring. So I feel like it was a needed change. It's obviously paid off quite well. I mean, 21 goals in 4 games, the first time in franchise history, even before the Stadium Series game, that we had scored 5 goals in 3 consecutive games. Now it's 4 consecutive games with the 6-1 blowout of Chicago. Also, we're 5-0 against Chicago in our last 5 regular season meetings. We're the only team to do that in the past 8 years, to have a 5-game winning streak against Chicago in the regular season.
Hopefully that can be a thing in May.
Yeah, too bad it doesn't matter in April and May. Yeah, that's very, very true. But yeah, big response. Guys like Matt Dumba, 2 goals in 4 games. Nino Niederreiter, 5 points in 4 games. Mikko Koivu, 5 points in 4 games. 6 points in 4 games for Pominville. And the ice time isn't too disparaging either, with the exception of Ryan Suter still playing about 28 minutes a game. But the other guys, it's so even, so spread out. The team is just managed a whole lot better.
That's the one style I think you can point to and say, yes, that is a different coaching philosophy. That is a completely different thing that John Torchetti brings than Mike Yeo did. And with Torchetti, as you said, you got about 8 to 9 players that, or more 6 to 8 forwards, I guess, that really kind of play the same amount of minutes outside of Mikko Koivu and Charlie Coyle. A lot of these other guys are playing just 12 to 13 minutes a game. And, it's all about matchups. That's what we've heard with John Torchetti, what he's told media recently. It's all about knowing who's the next up on the ice. If, as Michael Russo pointed out, if the Mikko Koivu line was out there, that means Jarrett Stoll's next. I mean, it's just more consistency. It's more of a voice. It's just a different philosophy. And clearly the Wild are responding to it well. And John Torchetti knows when he's playing the matchups, and when the Wild aren't really the most physical team, and they can be a very fast team, he's playing that to his advantage. And we're going to rely on a physical checking line of Jarrett Stoll and Ryan Carter, etc., to really be an important presence going forward. I know sometimes, your fourth line sets the tone. We all know that if anyone's ever played hockey, but at the same time, that fourth line is going to be relied on an awful lot down the stretch and in the playoffs. I really do. I think it's going to be a same kind of system moving forward of just 4 evenly balanced lines. And that's probably something you're going to get used to seeing with John Torchetti.
Yeah, it is. I like the balance. The pep talk too that he gave Eric Halla has clearly paid off, because Nino and Pominville have had a resurgence. And it's, we discussed it a couple weeks ago about, Pominville was just sorely snake bitten. It was like he was getting the chances, but you see him with the puck. That goal by Nina Ryder in the Chicago game, Pominville went down in the corner to chase that puck down after Chicago had already kind of got it. He dug it out away from him, dished it out to Halla, who made an amazing pass to Nino for the goal. But it was just obvious that he's kind of rejuvenated now, and that's awesome. He took that shot. His goal from the slot was just a rocket, vintage Palmer. So hopefully he keeps that up. Obviously, it's going to be very, very tough for him to maintain a 0.75 goals per game pace the rest of the way. But it's clearly an improvement. Everyone's playing a whole lot better. I'm very, very happy with the change so far. It's whether or not we can carry it over, because now we have a tough stretch coming up here.
Yeah, and you brought up with the whole Canadian point of just the fact that we went on that trip. It was against some low teams around the league, but we came back and we responded well against them. And yeah, they're lowly lights in the Western Eastern Conference, but that's important. You need to get those wins. It was just like the winning streak last year, where the Wild were able to kind of soften themselves up, give them some consistency, and then it worked out for them. Then all of a sudden the big boys came on the schedule, and the Wild were able to hang with them and get even more wins. So yes, now that you've gotten these easy wins outside of Chicago, now it's time for the Islanders. Washington, Florida, Philadelphia is also no slouch. I know they're on the outside, but they're definitely not a gimme win either. These next 4 games will be really telling, I think, of the John Torchetti era. I think it's unrealistic to just assume we're going on an 8-game winning streak, but if you can at least get 4 to 5 points over these next 8 games, or even, I guess, 6 points, if you can get a minimum of 5, but hopefully get 6 points, that'll probably be looked at as a very successful road trip.
Yeah, absolutely. But something I think that's important to remember is a month ago, the Wild wasn't going to beat those teams.
Oh yeah, no, yeah,
yeah. They were losing to those teams. Edmonton is has poor goaltending, but they have Connor McDavid is clearly everything everyone said about him is true. The kid's just so quick on the puck. He stick handles like he looks like he could stick handle through 2 guys in a phone booth if he wanted to. That's a very dangerous squad, even without Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, as far as scoring goals. And, we were able to come out there with the W. Vancouver, they've beaten us this season too. It was good. It was a good confidence booster. Yeah, absolutely. And I can't say enough how thrilled I am with the line changes too. That Granlund, Vanek, Zucker line. Zucker has only got 1 goal since Torchetti took over, but I feel like he should have 5. He's hit the pipe a couple times. He's had a couple breakaways. The line changes has been very important.
Yeah, the line changes have been good, and they've stayed the same. Now they'll stay the same when you score 20 goals in 4 straight games. Obviously, there's not going to be a whole lot of changes coming in and out. But yeah, it just seems like it's a completely new team, and And we talked about when the Wild were playing good at the beginning of the season, it was, it's not a bad thing that Thomas Vanek or Jason Pominville, I guess, is on the third line. I mean, sure, they're being paid a lot of money. They're perennial players that have scored 25, 30 goals over the last few seasons, but that's a good problem to have. That's a depth thing. That's good. And the Wild are able now to get the most of it. And most importantly, Eric Haula and Mikhail Granlund, obviously Haula more than Granlund right now, but they've taken the next step, and we've said it before too. The Wild have the wings to make any team successful. It's if they can get that player in the center of the ice to kind of set it up a little bit more and play a little bit more consistent hockey, and they're getting that. Eric Haula, being named the second star of the week for his play last week, and he is freed. I mean, 6 points in 33 games, and now 14 points in his last 16. It's absolutely fun to watch, and he's so confident with the puck right now. I think that's probably the biggest part of his game, and hockey is just one of those sports that when you are feeling great, it just translates to points on the ice and good things for your team, and that's happening with Eric Haula right now. I don't think there's anyone with a hotter hand around the league.
No, there isn't. I think the only reason he didn't get the first star was because of the big milestone that Yager had, and we'll touch on that soon. But yeah, it's amazing what a bit of confidence will do. And when you don't have to look over your shoulder and worry whether or not someone's just gonna chew you out for not getting back fast enough, for making a bad pass, or for turning it over in the ozone. I really hope this carries over. Yeah, I'm excited.
Very excited. And also, Devin Dubnyk and Darcy Kemper doing their thing. I think you're not going to see Dubnyk again being rode for 38 straight games. It'll be, I'm sure on these next 4 games with the Islanders, Philly, Washington, Florida, I'm sure you'll probably see Kemper against Philly and probably Dubnyk against the other 3 powerhouses. But then once March hits, a little bit softer schedule too. These games are so important. These next 4 games are just so telling for the Wild season of, okay, we've beaten these soft teams, we're back on track, but can we hang with the big boys again? And then in March, it's kind of back to that same old story of, all right, we got some lowly opponents that you must beat up on, because after March, then you're basically, you're in your own driver's seat. You're controlling your own destiny at that point for playoff seeding.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's quite obvious now that unless an insane run goes on, we're working for one of those 2 wild card spots. Hopefully that translates into some momentum, because it doesn't really matter what seed you get in today's NHL. The Kings won their first Stanley Cup a couple years ago. Not their first Stanley Cup. Well, yeah, their first Stanley Cup. Sorry, but they won that Stanley Cup in 2012 as an 8th seed. It's all about getting hot at the right time. That's always what happens in each playoffs. So, yeah, hopefully that carries over.
Yeah, let's take some questions now. We've had some questions that interact with us on Twitter. You can tweet us at our new Twitter page for the Lost in the Wild podcast. It's at Listen LITW. That is Listen LITW. Lit W, I guess, if that's easier to say. Tweet us at your questions throughout the show and throughout the week. First one from Zach Poquetti. I'm gonna go with Poquetti.
I think it's Poquette.
Okay.
Yeah, it's French Canadian. We like our French Canadians here on Lost in the Wild.
Yes, aye, Zach.
Aye.
He wants to know, is Matt Dumba the new team leader? And I think obviously the quick answer is no. I don't think he's necessarily a team leader, but I just like we were talking with Eric Haula, there is a confidence right now in Matt Dumba's game, and Matt Dumba, is such an intriguing defenseman because he has a great amount of offense to his game. We know he's a big kid, and we've been waiting for his defensive game to develop a little bit more, but we know how much offense he brings, and I think that's maybe just the difference with him and Ryan Suter, of that Matt Dumba is just this younger and more hungrier and definitely more of an emotion on his sleeve type of player. And that's a good thing. Is he emerging as a new team leader? I just think that's just too close to call right now. I just think it's not safe to make that assumption, but I'll say that he's playing about as confident as any player right now for the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, I absolutely think that's true. Is he a team leader? No. Yeah, short answer, no, but he's taking that development that everyone was waiting for. And like I said, I think he's kind of he's been freed a little bit. He doesn't have to look over his shoulder as much and worry about limiting his minutes if he makes a mistake. Torchetti's just kind of let him run wild, and with that being said, he hasn't been making a lot of defensive lapses in the past couple of games. Still have quite a bit of a chunk left in the season to go here, but he's playing with a great confidence, and he's the decision making is so important too. He decided to join that rush on that opening goal of the Stadium Series, and everyone, I saw across the Twitterverse that everyone was like, "What was Dumba doing that far in the rush?" Well, that's what you want an offensive defenseman to do, is join the rush and join the play, and it clearly worked out because you saw him score that goal, and just the yell, the confidence is clearly brimming. That's super important. But team leader, no, but hopefully he turns out to be the guy that everyone expects him to be, and we can see what happens from there.
Yeah, 3 points and a couple goals in 2 straight games for Matt Dumba right now, and playing some big time minutes. Sometimes being paired with Ryan Suter out there. Sometimes it's Spurgeon, but you've been harping on.
I love the Ryan Suter with Matt Dumba pairing is so important to not just the Wild going forward, but the continued development of Matt Dumba is pairing him with the guy where you can free the chains. # free Dumba. Free Dumba is the key to the Wild success the rest of the way, I think.
And yeah, you've been wanting it forever, and now I think more people are catching on. You must be this new elite hockey sponge mind that's just gravitating towards all this water of Dumba believers.
I've been saying that for years.
The next question we have from E, or Emmett Vernon, who's listening in St. Cloud. Vern, how you doing? He wants to know, do you think Torchetti can keep up the success with his current system and coaching style?
Yeah.
And that's a great question. Great question. And he does, obviously, he's not necessarily meaning we're not going to lose the rest of the way just because the Wild have won. And it's a little biased just because the Wild have won 4 straight games, and they've all been in larger fashions. And that's just been fun to watch. I think the games against Washington and the games against Florida and St. Louis, even, I think that I'm loving this, another St. Louis first round matchup again, because I think that'll be able to tell a physical team like St. Louis, can they slow down the Wild? And last year the answer was no, they couldn't. But that was a different system and a different way the Wild were playing, and it'll be interesting to see. I think he can keep it up, but Minnesota, I guess, just disclaimer to Minnesota hockey fans is I just know how quick we are to jump on board and then to throw him right off the boards when he's not looking. So I guess we have to wait and see how much more we can keep it up. It's been fun. It's been about as much fun as you can have in the last 4 games that the Minnesota Wild can remember, just because how much they're dominating teams. But we know that's not consistent. They're not going to score 5 goals a night every single night like they've been doing 4 games in a row. Look for a physical team to challenge them, and then I think you'll be able to tell what type of team the Wild really do have.
Yeah, I agree. It's well known. Fletcher has said that this is Torchetti's audition. He's held out from numerous NHL assistant offers because he wants to be a head coach. He wants to be a pro coach. He's clearly capable. I don't know how many people know this, but John Torchetti is the only North American to ever coach the Big Red CSKA Moscow of the Continental Hockey League. He's clearly capable, and this is his time to shine. I think he recognizes that too, because he's definitely not timid. Whatever you want to say about John Torchetti, he's not timid. He tells the players what he expects of them. He tells the media what he expects of the team. And I mean, he's doing great so far, but I think you're right. Yeah. A team like St. Louis, a bruising, a playoff tested, a veteran team like that's the test. Obviously Chicago, you could say the same thing for them. But this with the Stadium Series, those games are always kind of hard to judge how good a team is. Those games can always go one way or another just because of momentum from the home crowd, and the ice is always a little off. But yeah, if he carries it over, there's no reason why he doesn't get a contract. If we make the playoffs with John Torchetti, I think he gets a contract. I think he does too. Yeah, I don't think he gets a 3-year contract, but I bet you he'll get a 2-year contract, a bridge deal to kind of see what happens. And then they'll probably work an extension if he does well after that. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, yes, I think he can carry the success over because I think the players needed a change. I think no matter who took over, I think they needed somebody who's a little more vocal, like John Torchetti, but the players just look totally different. Everyone's talking on the bench. The dynamic of this team is a complete 180 from what it was, a few short weeks ago. And John Torchetti's a big reason for that. So yeah, if he carries that success over, I think he gets a contract, and I think he's a permanent head coach.
And then we got one more from Emmett as well, and he said, and this kind of translates well into our next trade deadline topic. Do you think Fletcher makes any move with the trade deadline approaching? And I'll let you answer this first. I've answered the first ones first, so I'll let you actually get your dibble on this one.
You know what? I feel like there's still feelers out there on Jonathan Drouin. That kind of went by the wayside. Everyone kind of stopped talking about it. Jason Zucker is day-to-day right now. I don't know who saw the hit, but he smacked his noggin pretty hard off the ice.
Yeah, he did.
From that hit from Michael Roosevelt. A lot of people are calling it a dirty hit. I don't think it was a dirty hit. I think it was just a guy trying to play the body, and it was a hockey collision. Chicago's not a dirty team, even though I don't like them. They don't win that way. I think it was frustration and poor positioning that got Michael Roosevelt in trouble with that hit. But if that day-to-day, within the next couple days translates into a longer term picture, I think you have to look at a Drouin because that replaces your scoring winger right there. However, the trade deadline is next Monday at 3 p.m. And I think you need to find out real quick of what your options are. Jonas Brodin being injured hurts a lot for any sort of trade the Minnesota Wild want to make. I feel like if Jonas Brodin is healthy, there's no way he's in a Wild sweater. And that's nothing to say about his play. I think the world of Jonas Brodin. However, Dustin Byfuglien signed that big contract. Dion Phaneuf got traded to Ottawa. I think he becomes a prime target in the trade talk for the Minnesota Wild. But with him being out, I just don't think you deplete that depth. I hope Fletcher doesn't make a move because with the way we're playing, you don't want to disrupt that. I think that would be silly. So no, I don't think Fletcher pulls the trigger. The only exception would be is if Jason Zucker kind of goes that day-to-day turns into, a more long-term basis. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Jonathan Drouin came to the team. However, the asking price would be the issue because I don't know who you trade.
Yeah, for me, it's a trade comes this summer, and I don't know who it would be. You have a guy like Brodin, that could very well be it already in a friendly contract. You got guys like Matt Dumba, whose stock is rising very highly, and then you have also guys like Mike Riley and Gustav Olofsson and Louis Belpedio, who are having very good seasons in the minors and are very close to being NHL ready. That you can package together as well. So. I don't think you make a move now. There's no need to make a move right now. All four lines are gelling so smoothly. Yes, Jason Zucker's injury could hamper those things for right now, but I think the Wild still have more in-house options that are more valuable. I think if Zucker's out long term, then you probably slide up Fontaine and maybe Jordan Schrader, to the chagrin of a lot of hockey fans, gets another debut with the Wild, or it's another AHL player. I don't think it's worth trying to go after a PA Prantherin or anyone like that. I don't think that's necessary. Or Jonathan Drouin or any one of those guys. This is an in-house problem for the Wild, and or an in-house solution. I really am trying to say for the Wild. No need to try and go out there and make a big trade. We got one more question too from Tim. We'll kind of segue out of here and get back into the trade deadline. He said, people forget that Minnesota had losing streaks in the prior 2 years with Mike Yeo. They bounced back and won in the playoffs. What would be success this year? Well, first off, I don't think anyone's forgotten about the losing streaks. I know what he's trying to say from the retrospect of, the losing streaks are a big problem. That's a telltale sign of we're not as good as we think we were. And I think that's what he's trying to say there. But he said, we bounced back and won the playoffs. Mike Yeo was retained. So, you said that if we make the playoffs, no matter what, I think Torchetti gets a contract extension. And I think I would say that if we make the playoffs, it's likely he gets one. I don't think it's guaranteed, but if he gets us to the second round and we actually play competitive in the second round, not like we did last year, we were bouncing for, then John Torchetti gets an extension and he's your coach. I mean,
You really think that that's are you saying that that's the criteria, like a second round, like a second round appearance, not just second round appearance, but a good second round showing is what's going to earn Torchetti a contract? Because in my opinion, if that's the case, then would you let's say this losing streak doesn't happen and Mike Yo's still the coach of the Minnesota Wild and we get in the playoffs and we get bounced in the second round. Do you fire Mike Yo for getting bounced in this? Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you do, just because at this point, all right, you've gotten past the first round, which I've talked about. I don't understand why everyone is such up in arms about that. We got past the first round. That is better than at least 66% of the other teams in this state that cannot get past the first round. I won't name names, but with Mike Yo at that point, all right, was his fifth full year here. We've now had a fourth year basically in a row where we were supposed to be within the top four of the Western Conference or even in the Western Conference Finals, and we haven't gotten there. And we took a step back we regressed from 2 years ago when we took the Blackhawks to Game 6 in that second round. So yes, I think he would be fired. But for Torchetti to really be guaranteed an extension, I think it's a first round win and a competitive second round showing. Obviously, if he gets to the Western Conference Finals, that's given. Yeah, but I'm also realistic, so I'm being realistic here. So I think he needs a second round appearance to be there. I really do.
Huh. Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't feel like people. I agree with you. I don't feel like people have forgotten about the losing streaks. However, what I think people forget, I've heard a lot of people saying, well, we've had these losing streaks before. Why don't we wait it out? Well, this one was getting to franchise record, terrible for us.
Right.
8 losses on home ice in a row, consecutive 8-game losing or 7-game losing streaks, 1-7, 1-8. And it was it's like I touched base earlier, it's just shown that, Mike Yo kind of lost his voice, and that's nothing to say against Mike Yo. I think Mike Yo is an NHL coach.
He's an NHL coach, absolutely.
I think he gets an NHL job. You don't survive it for 5 years as a head coach in the NHL not doing well at your job. Especially, he's let us out of the first round twice, which is he's the only coach to ever do that in Wild history, even though we've only been around 15 years. I get that. But yeah, he just lost the room. I think that's the case, and that the onus falls on the players as well. The players stopped listening. What he said was falling on deaf ears. They needed that. I think Mike Yo needed it too. It's good to have a fresh start, not just for him. I think everyone kind of gets wrapped up talking about the team, but I think Mike Yo, this will make Mike Yo a better coach too. Maybe it'll help him address some of the issues that he has.
All right, let's move into the trade deadline. Obviously, that's by the time we record our next podcast, it'll just be wrapping up. So we'll kind of preview what's going on. And for me, maybe let's go with what you expect. Who do you expect maybe for a team to really be buyers? And I guess I'll start here. I think Chicago buys in for a wing, for a big time wing. Going into this year, everyone said, well, okay, they lost Patrick Sharp. Marian Hossa right now is still injured. If I'm correct too, right?
Yes, you are correct.
And so they lost Johnny Oduya. They moved on from a lot of key components from the last few years Stanley Cup teams. Are they going to show it? Well, in the first 45 games, it didn't matter. And now I think I know it sounds crazy, not counting out a Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane, who have already have 3 rings and they're ready looking to fill up a full hand right now. But I think Chicago needs one more weapon on the offensive front to really be there. For me, I think a PA Parento is a perfect fit for them. A guy that really, I think a lot of people wanted to see more from him in his game when you really break down his career numbers. He's kind of always been a little bit of an injury bug the last few years. But I think that's someone, and Toronto's in just a clear blow-it-up mode right now, and they're gearing up for the next dynasty. I think Chicago makes a run, and I think they need one to legitimately be in the race this year for the West for a Stanley Cup bid?
Yeah, I think Chicago could make a move for maybe a Mikhail Boker, PA Perron. Well, really anyone who's playing for Toronto right now is on the block.
Right.
I could see them moving just about everything. However, Dallas, despite all their success, needs another top 4 defenseman. I think there's a guy like Christian Ehrhoff was placed on waivers. I'm kind of surprised that he didn't get picked up. He's got a pedigree. He's a veteran defenseman. I think they need that because Dallas strikes me with their goaltending, which their goaltending is not anything to be blown away by.
Right.
They win their games with offense, and since the early 1990s, those offensive juggernauts aren't what win Stanley Cups. Ask the Washington Capitals of a couple of years ago. Alex Ovechkin will tell you all about that. I think they need a shutdown D-man. There's not a lot of them out there left, just because of the trades of Dion Phaneuf, the signing of Dustin Byfuglien. Dan Hamhuis is a guy who is injured a lot, but I could see Dallas going after him. He's not exactly a shutdown guy, but he's a veteran guy. He's a capable guy. He's important. Chris Russell falls into that.
What about Mark Streit of Philly? I know he could be someone that they want to move. He's an older guy. He's very much older, but he still plays a very good defensive game.
He's an older guy, but I think I don't think he plays the game that they want. I think Luke Shen, Roman Pollock from Toronto, he got moved today to San Jose for a second-round pick, which
two of them, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I was confused.
I have no idea what Doug Wilson is doing right now. I think Doug Wilson just doesn't want anything to do with his job. Doesn't want anything to do with the Sharks anymore. He's just going to screw it up. Yeah, but yeah, Roman Pollock, he would have been a good addition. Another guy to look at to be on the move is Justin Schultz. When Minnesota went to the Edmonton game, during the opening lineup announcements, Justin Schultz was booed by the home team. Which is too bad. I think he's a very, very offensively gifted defenseman, but I think because of he came out of college, he chose not to sign with Anaheim, therefore he became a free agent, and everyone kind of blew him up to maybe being a bigger product than what he really was. I think he's a top 4 guy, but he's nothing more. And I think Edmonton kind of hoped he was going to anchor their defense for years, and he clearly isn't. So I think he's a guy who's going to be on the move. A lot of the big names they talked about earlier in the season, Eric Stahl. I don't think Eric Stahl's going to go anywhere because he holds all the cards. He has a no movement clause in his contract. If Winnipeg is on the bubble, or not so much on the bubble, but on the outside looking in, and which they are. I think they get rid of Andrew Ladd too.
Yeah.
They've tried twice to come up with contract agreements, and they can't. I think Andrew Ladd, he's 30 years old. He's a rental player, but I could see him getting moved as well.
Yeah, I would think if you're Chicago, you're picking up the phone, you're trying to make a call for Ladd. Or Parento. I think that's got to be it for them right now. I know it's crazy to count on a team like Chicago, but I really think they need that. They're obviously going to be in the playoffs. That's not what I'm debating, but I think they'll have a tough time getting past the second round without more offense, which is just really, when you boil it down, crazy to think about when you think about the Chicago Blackhawks and with the players they still have right now. But I think they're going to be there. Islanders. The Islanders are in a very interesting predicament as an organization because they have a lot of free agents and restricted free agencies coming up, but they're playing very good hockey right now. What do you think New York does?
Ooh, see, man, could you imagine a Rangers Islanders first round playoff series? I mean, that would be awesome. Oh man, yeah, the Islanders. They're another team I think needs defensive help. They've got a lot of good weapons: Anders Lee, Brock Nelson, Kyle Okposo, obviously Johnny Tavares. Maybe they trade Travis Harmonic for another just a hockey trade. I'm interested to see how many hockey trades come. We saw that with the Seth Jones Ryan Johansson trade, but I think if they make a move, that's what's going to have to be. Uh, Maybe they could add a depth guy with who's got a ring like Christopher Stieg. I know he's on the block for Carolina, but yeah, Islanders need a top 4 guy too. Just about every team needs a top 4 guy. I get that, but Islanders especially if Islanders want to get out of the first round.
Does Jonathan Drouin get traded? And if to, who is the suitors for him?
Ooh, Jonathan Drouin. Man, a couple weeks ago I said absolutely it has to happen. But I feel like, there was all this buzz about Steven Stamkos too, and poor Steve Yzerman, was kind of dealing with all this and was just like, finally just said, we're not trading Stamkos, which I think is a good move. You don't trade a 60-goal scorer when you went to the Stanley Cup Finals a year ago and you have the chance to go again this year, because Tampa Bay is every bit that team. They don't have the record, but they are the same team and they can do that. You don't dump that guy. I know a lot of people say otherwise, but that would be crazy to me if Steve Stamkos ever got moved. However, because he did that and said, Stamkos isn't moved, I feel like he relieved some of the pressure of people, hounding him. And like I said, Jonathan Drouin has kind of just been quiet. If he does get moved, it's to a young team who can part with, draft picks, maybe, a Winnipeg, maybe. An interesting move might be Andrew Ladd for Jonathan Drouin. You trade Jonathan Drouin, you get a lot of cap relief. Obviously, Ladd comes off the books. He's a rental player, but he's got that winning pedigree, and maybe he helps Stammer get that Stanley Cup he wants and helps him stay in Tampa Bay. That's a pure hockey trade, though. That's kind of odd to see. Another young team. I could see the Islanders. Just about every team's inquired about Drouin, but yeah, Islanders, Winnipeg. I could see Nashville because even though they acquired Johansson, they're not playing that great still. They're still starving for offense. Pekka Rinne seems like he's starting to show a little bit of his age too. So I don't know what the goalie market is looking like, but he's been a thorn in their side as well.
All right, so let's talk Jágr. You've been harping on this since last week, and now it's been maybe more of a reality or more of a casual thought. Jaromir Jágr, if no one's heard, is another milestone. He's played in his bajillionth NHL game and keeps scoring goals, and he's played in 4 eras and just continues to really pound home goals. Liam brought up a question last week that said, if correct me if I'm wrong, but if Jágr played throughout the same era as Gretzky from when Gretzky came in the league, and in Gretzky, who played in, I believe, 20 seasons, would he have surpassed, I believe, more points, not just more goals, but more points too? Is that correct?
More goals, more so than more points. I don't want everyone to just bombard me here and say, how could I say this about Gretzky? Wayne Gretzky is the greatest hockey player to ever play. I get that. But just with players being bigger and stronger, faster every generation, Jaromir Jágr has transcended that through multiple eras in the NHL. He's 5 points away from Gordie Howe, and I'm gonna get this again, but he's done it in over 100 games less than Gordie Howe and he's played in an era where goal scoring is so far away from what it used to be that it blows my mind. I feel like people aren't paying as much attention to it. I'm not trying to take away from Wayne Gretzky. I'm not trying to take away from Gordie Howe, but I almost wonder, I mentioned this last week. I think it's hard to put it into perspective when it's going on right in front of you. But 5, maybe 10 years down the road, when Jágr hasn't been playing for a while, where does he stand? Because right now, he has a higher point per game average than Gordie Howe. He's 5 points away from Gordie Howe on the all-time list. he's got more assists. I don't think he catches them on points. He's about 50, 60 goals away from him on goals. Sorry, that's what I meant, not points. But he's transcended these multiple eras, and I feel like he's not. I feel like he's getting recognition, but I just feel like we're paying attention to him now because look at him, he's 44 years old, he's doing all these big things. But the big picture, I stand by my statement. I feel like Jaromir Jagr is a top 3 all-time NHL player.
Top 3.
Just with those numbers. I feel like the numbers, if you're saying, like, when people talk about Gordie Howe, Mr. Hockey, right?
Right.
He's gonna have more points than Mr. Hockey. If you have more points than Mr. Hockey, that's gotta say something on to your merit and to where you stand all time. If you have more points than Mr. Hockey, wouldn't you say that you stand within not just the top 5, but the top 3? If Mr. Hockey is counted as maybe the second best, maybe the best. Wayne Gretzky always says that Gordie Howe's the best hockey player to ever play. I don't agree with that, but don't you think that Jagr maybe deserves to be in that conversation then?
I think he should be part of the conversation. I think he could be. I think it's also so hard to put a player in another era and vice versa and assume that, that they would be successful in that time. Just with everyone involved in the league at that point and with how the game is played, it's always so hard, to figure that out. But you bring up a good point of, well, forget about the era. When it's all said and done, where do you rank Jaromir Jagr on an all-time list? I said last week, I would put him at 6, maybe a 5, I guess.
Ugh,
but
blasphemy.
It's hard. It's so hard. It's so hard. There's so many good players that have played the game, and he's there, man. It's just and if you compiled a list of the top 10, 3 people from NHL Network, 3 people from NHL executives and all things else, I'm sure there are people that would believe that Jaromir Jagr is a 3rd on the list, but I would say there'd be more that have him outside of it. I do.
See, and it's like I'm saying, like, I feel like there's a lot of people, the analysts, especially, not so much ESPN, but maybe like TSN in Canada, where they're a little more knowledgeable. Not to take anything away from Pierre LeBrun or EJ Hedrick.
It's true.
But it's just true. Those guys come from that generation of Gordie Howe, and they talk about him being the complete player. Jagr is not a small, shy away from physical contact guy. He's not getting into fights like Gordie Howe was either. But I just feel like I worry that Jaromir Jagr, even with the recognition he's getting now for how old he is and helping this Florida squad achieve what they are, I worry that his all-time status is not being recognized because of, he's got 2 Stanley Cups. He's a member of the Triple Gold Club, a gold medal, Stanley Cup, and a World Championship. I just feel like, especially maybe a lot of it's because, I don't remember Gretzky, in his prime. I remember Jaromir Jagr in his prime, which I'm sure helps. But obviously I never saw Gordie Howe because I'm not 90 years old. But Jagr, I just feel, deserves to be in that conversation. And I know we can argue till we're blue in the face about it, but I just feel like the numbers alone tell you. If you're 5 points away from the guy that they call Mr. Hockey, and it's looking like Jagr's got at least another year left in the tank. I mean, I just wonder where people rank him all time.
It's a great question. Anything else in hockey that we haven't touched on in the podcast before we get our last words in?
No, Stadium Series went well.
Yep.
Yeah, just feel like the trade deadline is going to be a really slow trade deadline unless there's some big surprise. This year, I just don't think anything happening. Don't look for the Wild to do anything unless it's for prospects. I could see them moving one of their younger D guys who are playing on the baby Wild, just because Mike Riley and Christian Folin have done so well, and maybe they could try to trade like a Gustav Olsson for a draft pick, which we should expect maybe. But don't look. Maybe Andrew Ladd gets moved. I don't expect Eric Stahl to get moved because Carolina's playing well. Yeah. Slow trade deadline.
Well, last words here. Spring training, MLB, right around the corner.
Yeah,
Pitchers and catchers have all
absolutely.
reported. Full team squads coming up this week as well. Fun, anything exciting in the baseball world? I know Carolina doesn't, they have a lot of minor league teams down there, but nothing really
You, you
going in the
know,
major league scene.
Carolina gets a lot of attention, obviously, for their basketball, but there's a lot of, very good. Madison Bumgarner is from North Carolina. There's a lot of good baseball programs around here, especially in Eastern North Carolina. It's actually kind of a bigger deal than basketball, surprisingly. Kind of surprised me when I first moved down here. But yeah, they got a lot of good baseball programs. State's a good program. Yeah, they like their baseball down here. There's a lot of farm squads down here. Yeah, no pro teams, but yeah, good farm squads, which I love a good farm team. I feel like, you go and you have a beer, you sit in a bleacher. It's not that great. You heckle them a little bit because they can hear you. It's a good time.
Very true point. Very good point. Twinkies with their spring training, what to expect. Really isn't that. This is of all, every spring training of all who's going to win this job or what's it. The Twins basically have, I think, safe to assume at least 20 players penciled in that you could write down right now. Like, yeah, that is their lineup, or they will be there on the roster.
I'd be interested to see if they move Miguel Sano to the outfield this year, only for his development.
Well, I just obviously, that's the case. If the season started tomorrow, he'd be in right field. Is this experiment going to work? I don't think it's going to work. I really don't. And
we'll see.
It's going to be. They'll start with it. They're going to roll with it. But man, I don't like it. I think Plouffe should have been traded. When his value will never be higher than what he's being paid for right now. Everything was kind of perfect for it, but I guess whatever. Twins baseball's here. Hopefully, it'll be another at least decent year. I'm predicting literally the same record. I think Twins win 83 games again, miss the playoffs, but are fun to watch.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say over under for 85 game win season. Over or under.
Yeah,
under.
Okay. Under.
You know what? I'm gonna go on a limb and say over. I feel like a lot of those young guys just I feel like the young guys got some playing time in. Maybe I hope Byron Buxton takes the next step. I kind of was disappointed with what I saw, but I think a lot of that was because he was rushed. So yeah, hopefully over.
All right, you got the last word, and it's been a solid podcast. But you take us home here.
Solid podcast, absolutely solid podcast.
Great podcast.
4 wins by our Minnesota Wild. Big win in the Stadium Series. Yeah, I feel like this is a totally different team. Pay attention to them. And if they lose a game, I'd appreciate some other Minnesota Wild blogs not just turn on them so fast. The negativity is what kills me. I feel like I preached that last game. I feel like the power of positivity willed our team to 4 wins. I feel like I got through to you. I feel like that's what happened. So let's stay positive. I feel like it's a totally different team. I'm in such a good mood. I know some people might think I'm a homer. Trust me, I'm not. You can ask my brother. I'm just about as critical as it comes. I'm excited about the continued development of Charlie Coyle. Yeah, go Wild. Big game against the Islanders on Tuesday. Hopefully we don't have a letdown from Sunday. It's on home ice. I know the game was in TCF Bank Stadium, but we haven't won in the X in over a month. Let's get that one too.